O God, who art the author of all manifestations, the source of all sources, the fountainhead of all revelations, and the wellspring of all lights, I testify that by thy name, the heaven of understanding hath been adorned, and the ocean of utterance hath surged, and the dispensations of thy providence have been promulgated unto the followers of all religions. I beseech thee so to enrich me as to dispense with all save thee, and be made independent of anyone except thyself. Rain down then upon me out of the clouds of thy bounty, that which shall profit me in every world of thy worlds. Assist me then through thy strengthening grace to serve thy cause amidst thy servants, that I may show forth what will cause me to be remembered as long as thine own kingdom endureth and thy dominion will last. This thy servant, O my Lord, who with his whole being hath turned unto the horizon of thy bounty, and the ocean of thy grace, and the heaven of thy gifts. Do with me then as becometh thy majesty, and thy glory, and thy bounteousness, and thy grace. Thou, in truth, art the God of strength and power, who art meet to answer them that pray. There is no God save thee, the all-knowing, the all-wise. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you. Excuse me. Well, folks, here we are. It's the fourth time we get together. Tonight, we're going to focus on something called the Hadith of Gabriel. I don't know if any of you have heard of it before, but it's a very prominent story in Islam. And I think it will help clarify for everyone what Sufism is, what faith is in Islam, and several other things. So let's jump right in. One of the things that should be obvious from the last two classes is the fact that Ibn Arabi was a Sufi. So what does this label actually mean? What exactly is Sufism, and how does it fit into the rest of Islam? So those of you who have read something about the subject will likely have heard of the controversy surrounding the origins of Sufism. Over the decades, Orientalists have understood Sufism to have originated as, quote, a result of the influence of Neoplatonism, Christian monasticism, the Aryan reaction to a Semitic religion, Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and practically every other conceivable source. In each case, the proponent of the theory advocates some formal resemblance or perhaps even historical borrowing of a method or form of expression as a proof of the non-Islamic origin of Sufism. But it's clear to Muslims that underneath all these theories lies the unstated assumption that Islam is not really a divine revelation, and it therefore cannot possibly have a genuine spiritual dimension of its own. In addition, since the Crusades, the West has believed that Islam is nothing but a religion of the sword, which has imposed its social order by brute force. Anything demonstrating a contemplative or metaphysical nature in Islam must obviously have been borrowed externally. Sayyid Hussein Nasr counters these arguments by pointing out the nature of all spiritual paths. So I wonder if I could ask David Erickson if he would mind reading number 1 for us. I'll bring it up on the screen. Hopefully. There it is.
There we go.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. A spiritual path is one through which man is able to transcend his own human limitations. Wait a second. and approach the divine. Therefore, the path itself cannot be man-made. For man to try to transcend human nature by something devised by man is logically absurd. Anyone who accepts the reality of the spiritual life must accept the fact that the spiritual way must contain within itself a grace which is not man-made, that it must ultimately be a path which God has ordained and placed before man to follow. Nasser, Ideals and Realities of Islam.
Okay, thank you. He then proceeds to apply the same logic to the situation within Islam. And maybe Belinda, since you're unmuted, you could just go ahead and read number 2 for us.
Either the Tariqah in Islam is a spiritual path which can produce sanctity, whose fruit bears testimony to its divine origin through the spiritual fragrance that it carries, or it is borrowed from outside of Islam. That is, it is borrowed and devised by men and is therefore actually man-made, in which case it is not a spiritual path at all, and there's no use talking about it as such. And that's Nasser, Ideals and Realities of Islam, page 128.
Thank you. So in other words, as Jesus put it so eloquently, by their fruits you shall know them.
Yeah.
To decide the issue, we will continue to examine one of Sufism's best and brightest, i.e. Ibn Arabi, to see if we can detect that spiritual grace, or barakah as they call it in Islam, which Nasser believes can only have a divine origin. In the case of Ibn Arabi, the grace will derive from the Prophet Muhammad and his book, the Quran. If he passes this test, we can be certain that Sufism is an authentic expression of the transformational power of Islam, not a system borrowed from other religious systems. The issue is rather important. The side one chooses in this argument will determine the status one is willing to accord to the whole structure of Islam. Is it divine or merely a human creation? Okay, well, I see Bob Andrighetti is here. I wonder if you'd read number 3 for us, or yeah, 3. Thanks, Bob.
Sure, thanks, Mark. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Once Sufism is made to be a foreign borrowing, then Islam itself becomes, in foreign eyes, solely a social political system which no longer appeals to the deepest spiritual urge of man. The reason for the relative neglect of the study of Islam in the field of comparative religion today is precisely because its more contemplative aspects are neglected and often dismissed as not genuine. Also, Sufism itself cannot be appreciated in its true light and take it seriously until it is realized that the Tariqah, or the esoteric dimension of Islam, has its roots in the Quran. And like all aspects of Islamic orthodoxy, is based on the twin sources of the Quran and the Hadith.
They're connected somehow, aren't they? Okay. This paragraph, particularly in light of Shoghi Effendi's explicit instructions to Baha'is to study Islam, provides a significant justification for our exploration of Sufism as expressed by Ibn Arabi. I wonder about Margaret. Are you able to read number 4 for us, Margaret?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually read this afternoon because I was quite intrigued by it. In my Advent of Divine Justice, which is probably a little older, it was on page 41.
Oh, I should check that. Yeah.
But anyway, they who participate in Baha'i teaching campaigns must strive to obtain from sources that are authoritative and unbiased a sound knowledge of the history and tenets of Islam, the source and background of their faith, and approach reverently and with a mind purged from preconceived ideas the study of the Quran, which, apart from the sacred scriptures of the Babi and Baha'i revelations, constitutes the only book which can be regarded as an absolutely authenticated repository of the Word of God. They must devote special attention to the investigation of those institutions and circumstances that are directly connected with the origin and birth of their faith, with the station claimed by its forerunner, and with the laws revealed by its author. And Shoghi Effendi.
So I really feel like this is giving us marching orders,
Yeah.
particularly for everyone who comes from a Christian background or a Jewish background. You need to know something about this faith because it's so intertwined with the Baha'i faith. But which version of Islam do you focus on? So many choices. Margaret's got a point.
I'm just wondering if we're going to study the Quran. I understood the Quran should be studied in the original language and in Arabic rather than in translation. I'm never going to learn Arabic, and I don't know whether the majority of Baha'is will. Is there a version that would have been okay by either the Universal House of Justice? I think Shoghi Effendi had mentioned one, but I'm not sure whether that's even in print at this point.
He actually mentioned two. There was one by a very old one by a British scholar by the name of George Sale,
Yeah.
which was written, oh my God, 200 years ago. One of its virtues was that it had an extremely detailed set of notes to go along with the translation. It's extremely difficult to get a hold of. I have a copy, but they're rare as hen's teeth. Now, who was the other one? I'm sorry. There's a much more recent one that he had recommended. Jack, do you remember?
Rodwell.
Marbury and
Rodwell.
Rodwell, yep. Rodwell was a convert to Islam later in his life. Now, the problem is that there have been probably 24 or more translations done since then. And a lot of scholarly effort has gone into everything associated with Arabic and its relationship to previous languages. So they're always fine-tuning the meanings of certain key terms in the original. I mean, it's lovely if you do have Arabic, you can read the original, but a lot of its content is, shall we say, esoteric from our point of view, because we're, many hundreds of years later, so we don't appreciate a lot of the references. So it's great to have a commentary of some kind, which is one of the reasons why I've adopted the Study Quran by Nasser and a group of his followers. It's about 2,000 pages long. It's got enormous notes. So anything you want to dig into is there. And it has the merit of including comments from many different groups within Islam on every one of the passages that are contentious. So you get the Shiite view, you get the Sufi view, you get the Sunni view, the Ismaili view of things where there is a difference to be had. So that's the one. It's currently available in chapters or whatever online. It's, I think, probably the best at the moment. But I haven't, that's the Kitabi Kidwell. That's not, nobody has said, thou shalt read this one. So I've got 15 different translations here. I find that one the most straightforward but meaningful. But anyway, I'll leave that up to you.
Could Linda maybe just give us the reference for that? That would be useful.
Well,
Or yourself?
I can send that out when I send out
Okay.
the notification about the video being put out tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll include that.
Okay. Thank you.
Just write a note to myself. Okay. Okay, so what I want to do is talk about the relationship between the Shari'ah, the Tariqah, and the Haqiqah. This will help us to see how Sufism fits within the religion of Islam. Okay, one of the clearest explanations of its relative position comes from certain of the traditional Sufi masters particularly from the Shari'ah order. They use the geometric symbol of a circle to clarify Sufism's relationship with the Shari'ah. And the Shari'ah is the divine law by virtue of whose acceptance man becomes a Muslim. So I see Linda sitting there, Linda O'Neill. I wonder if you could read this bit long, number 5. Let me just bring it back up again. There's number 5 to begin. I'll move it later.
From any point in space, there can be generated a circle, an indefinite number of radii, which connect every point of the circumference of the circle to the center. The circumference is the Shari'ah, whose totality comprises the whole of the Muslim community. Every Muslim, by virtue of accepting the divine law, is as a point standing on this circle. The radii symbolize the Turuq, plural of Tariqah. Each radius is a path from the circumference to the center. As the Sufis say, there are as many paths to God as there are children of Adam. The Tariqah, which exists in many different forms, corresponding to different spiritual temperaments and needs of men, is the radius which connects each point to the center. It is only by virtue of standing on the circumference, that is, accepting the Shari'ah, that man can discover before him a radius that leads to the center. Only in following the Shari'ah does the possibility of having the door of the spiritual life open become realized.
Thank you. So, are there any questions about that? I'm noticing that there are quite a few chats here. I'm going to turn off the sharing for a minute. Let's see what's happening in the chat room. Come on up. Oh my goodness. What have we got here? Okay.
Mark, I just sent a link to the Amazon purchase for the
Oh,
the
okay.
study
Thank you.
program, yeah.
Okay. So Margaret, there it is in the chat.
Turned out longer than I thought, but anyway, you get right to the purchase. It's $52.
Now, is that the paperback or the hardcover?
I think it's the paperback.
Oh. Anyway, it's a big book. Okay. Yeah, this is Maury's point about Todd Lawson as an expert in Islam and the Baha'i faith would certainly have an interesting point of view. I know he's in favor of the Arbery translation. Well, I've heard him say that at one point, but I don't know what he would say now. So I guess I could drop him a line and see what he says and let you know. Okay. Close the chat now. Let's see. So this same circle serves to indicate the relationship of the Sufi path, which is the Tariqah that goes, it's like the spokes of a bicycle wheel, that leads into the divine truth or Haqiqah at the center of the bicycle wheel. Okay. This is the source from which both the Shari'ah and the Tariqah spring. Okay. That's the heart of the religion. All right, let's see who's here. We got, oh, Lori Hanson Tripp. How about you? Would you like to read number 6 for us? Let's bring it back up.
Certainly.
Okay, shares these 6. There it is.
Just as geometrically, the point generates both the radii and the circumference, so does metaphysically the Haqiqah create both the Tariqah and the Shari'ah. The
Shari'ah.
Haqiqah, or center, which is everywhere and nowhere. The law and the way, have both been brought into being independently by God, who is the truth. And both reflect the center in different ways. To participate in the Shari'ah is to live in the reflection of the center or unity, for the circumference is a reflection of the center. It is thus the necessary and sufficient cause for living a whole life and being saved.
Thank you. So for many people, life on the circumference is fully satisfying. I would say the majority of people.
Mhm.
They are content to worship God at the center of the Islamic circle from afar. There are others, though, who are not content to live on the outskirts of the divine. They want to live as near to the center as they can get. These are the people referred to as Sufis. Okay. Now, who was I going to? I know, Carol, you're there. Would you like to read number 7 for us?
Yes, I'm here. But there are always those whose inner constitution is such that they cannot only live in the reflection of the center, but must seek to reach it. Their Islam is to walk upon the path towards the center. For them, the Tariqah is providentially the means whereby they can attain that final end or goal, that Haqiqah, which is the origin of all things, from which the integral tradition comprising the law and the way, or the circumference, and radii originate. And this is Ideals and Realities of Islam by S.H. Nasser.
Mhm. Thank you. And that's radii. That's the plural of radius.
Yeah, radii. And I'm taking math.
Well, you're on it now. Okay.
On it now.
So there's another well-known Sufi symbol to describe the tightly intertwined relationship between these 3 aspects of Islam. I'm wondering if Fuad would read number 8 for us.
Sure. Islam is like a walnut of which the shell is like the Shari'ah, the kernel like the Tariqah, and the oil which is invisible yet everywhere present, the Haqiqah. A walnut without a shell could not grow in the world of nature, and without a kernel would have no end and purpose. The Shari'ah without the Tariqah would be like a body without a soul, and the Tariqah without the Shari'ah would be devoid of any external support and simply could not subsist and manifest itself in this world. For the totality of the tradition, the one like the other is absolutely necessary.
Hey, thank you.
From Nasr.
Mhm. Okay. So I've given you 2 symbols to think about the relationship between Sufism and the law, which is the external or the exterior portion of the religion, the Shari'ah, and then to the inmost heart, which is the Haqiqah. Hopefully it's becoming clear now. So now it's time to think about the Hadith of Gabriel. So given the many so-called Sufi groups which have sprung up in North America and Europe, which have few or no ties with Islam itself, the points Nasser has raised are essential for us to understand. William Chittick and his wife Sachiko Murata are both professors at the Stony Brook campus of the State University of New York on Long Island. They both specialize in Islamic studies. Together, they've written a marvelously insightful introductory book on the Islamic faith called The Vision of Islam, which was published in 1994. They devote its 350 pages to unpacking the significance of a single hadith of Muhammad. In the Islamic world, a hadith is a record of the words, actions, or silent approval of the Prophet Muhammad. Over the centuries, Muslim thinkers have often employed this famous and authentic tradition as a concise overview of the beliefs, practices, and institutions that make Islam a major religion. As an additional benefit for us, it also situates Sufism within its rightful context. So I'm going to force us to read the full text of this. I find a fascinating piece. It's not that long. The man telling the story was later to become the second rightly guided caliph after Abu Bakr, who was the first. And that Abu Bakr took over when Muhammad died in 632 Common Era. And the second person was Umar, or Omar as he's called. He reigned for 10 years from 634 to 644 before being killed. Okay, so let's see who would like to read. How about you, Alan? Start us off with number 9, which continues on, I believe, in number 10. Yeah, so just read 9 for us here.
Okay. Umar ibn al-Khattab said, "One day, when we were with God's messenger, a man with very white clothing and very black hair came up to us. No mark of travel was visible on him, and none of us recognized him. Sitting down before the Prophet, leaning his knees against his and placing his hands on his thighs, he said, 'Tell me, Muhammad, about submission.' He replied, 'Submission means that you should bear witness that there is no God but God, and that Muhammad is God's messenger, that you should perform the ritual prayer, pay the alms tax, fast during Ramadan, and make the pilgrimage to the house if you are able to go there.' The man said, 'You have spoken the truth.' We were surprised at his questioning him and then declaring that he had spoken the truth. He said, 'Now tell me about faith.' He replied, 'Faith means that you have faith in God, his angels, his books, his messengers, and the last day, and that you have faith in the measuring out, both its good and its evil.'"
Thanks, Alan. Leslie, would you like to continue on with number 10 for us? Wrap up the end of the story.
Sure. Remarking that he had spoken the truth, he then said, "Now tell me about doing what is beautiful." He replied, "Doing what is beautiful means that you should worship God as if you see him, for even if you do not see him, he sees you." Then the man said, "Tell me about the hour." The prophet replied, "About that, he who is questioned knows no more than the questioner." The man said, "Then tell me about its marks." He said, "The slave girl will give birth to her mistress, and you will see the barefoot, the naked, the destitute, and the shepherds vying with each other in building." Then the man went away. After I'd waited for a long time, the prophet said to me, "Do you know who the questioner was, Umar?" I replied, "God and his messenger know best." He said, "He was Gabriel. He came to teach you your religion."
Gabriel. Thanks, Leslie.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
should we wait for you to solicit questions?
No, you can go right ahead, Maury.
Okie dokie. There was something I didn't understand in that. Hold on.
In 10 or 9?
Yes. This where they talk about the one about the mistress and the
Yes,
giving.
that's the end of 10.
Yeah, what are vying with each other in building?
I don't know what that means.
Okay.
I didn't, I know it seems really intriguing, but it doesn't really matter
It doesn't
to the
matter.
story that we're making.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
I can dig into it if you want,
No, it's okay.
but yeah, it's beside the point. But I think these are just symbols of what will happen at the day of
I
resurrection.
see. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So in a sense, this is what's going to happen when the Bob arrives
Okay.
from a Baha'i perspective. But the actual nature of those symbols, I haven't dug into.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry,
No problem.
not a very good answer, I don't think. I should have taken that out, actually.
No, well, we all have to focus, right, on the priorities.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Mark, can I give I've heard something about those.
Have you?
particular
Okay.
hadith. Yeah, it's very famous, actually. I've heard it from a few Muslim friends of mine. But I think one of the problems is the way it's translated into the English.
Okay.
Because the first sign, rather than submission, it should say Islam.
Okay.
And the second one that's translated beauty should really be ihsan, or goodness. Different people would translate that as goodness or propriety or properness. Like somebody's called Hassan, comes from ihsan. And the other one, the hour, is the hour of resurrection.
Some background information that we need to add that would be obvious to the original listeners, but not to readers living many centuries later and many miles away. Muhammad, the messenger of God, whom his companions considered to be the greatest human being on the face of the planet, is sitting at the edge of an oasis in Medina with a group of his followers who have accepted him as the mouthpiece of God, when a man whom no one recognizes suddenly appears out of the desert. At that time, Medina was a tiny community in the middle of the desert with a population of several hundred or perhaps a few thousand. Everyone knows everyone. If a traveler arrives, it's a major event, given the difficulty of travel and the small population. Everyone learns about a new arrival within a matter of hours. Not only do Muhammad's companions fail to recognize the stranger, he also shows no sign of travel. As Chidik says, you think you feel bad after 6 hours in a car. Think of 6 days in the hottest and dustiest environment you can imagine, with no air-conditioned rest stops for coffee or soda. So people are immediately curious. Who can this person be, and how did he get here without our knowing about it? The next unusual fact is that the man is obviously on familiar terms with the prophet of God. He comes right up and kneels in front of him, his knees against the prophet's knees. Normally, you would only get this close if he were your brother or very close friend. Otherwise, you would greet him from a respectful distance. Not only does the traveler kneel against Muhammad, he places his hands on Muhammad's thighs, which would be an unheard of piece of effrontery if the man were a stranger. In addition, he addresses Muhammad by name, whereas regular people always address him by his title, Messenger of God. So I see Bob LeBlanc there. I wonder if you would read number 11 for us.
Sure. And Mark, Carol has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Let's deal with that first. Hi, Carol. What's up?
Actually, you answered the question. After 9 and 10, that was an example of a hadith, right? It's next.
Yes,
to,
it is.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Oh, okay. Okay, Bob. Let's look at 11 then.
Once Muhammad answers the man's first question, the man says, "You have spoken the truth." Umar remarks, "We were surprised at his questioning and then declaring that he had spoken the truth. This is an enormous understatement. More likely, the companions were flabbergasted. What kind of insolence is this? To come up to God's own messenger and begin to grill him, and then to pat him on the head as if he were a schoolboy. This is inconceivable. But then again, the companions took their clues from Muhammad. He was acting as if all this were perfectly normal and natural. What could they do but follow his example?
So after the man leaves, Muhammad waits for a while to give his companions a chance to think about this incredible incident. Finally, he explains what had happened. Considering the background we've just described, his companions would not soon forget the event. And it would not be long before everyone else in Medina had heard about Gabriel's appearance. Okay, how about Sylvie for number 12?
No one was supposed to forget about this visit, for the Prophet had just presented them with their religion in a nutshell. If they ever wanted to know what was essential in Islam, all they had to do was remember the strange events of this day.
Okay, so that's a logical place to have a break. Linda, if you want to just stop the recording.